Chad, if you send us an invoice, I will, I won't pay it.
Just put it on your tab.
Well,
What am I saving for next time?
Al, did you walk?
I did.
Give me a ride home.
It got a little darker on the way here than
Yeah.
the way it looked out my window before I left. And I caught Scornia going in down there. I go, well, here we go again.
Yeah.
nobody takes it.
Can't talk about
Got a quorum?
Got a minute.
Well, I have to look at it again. I thought
it. What are we talking about? 5:30. Budget?
I thought Mike yelled at you.
Get through all the tax receipts. I was gonna call you all, because what did we do to get that 5 years ago?
So good.
Handyman.
Okay, everybody ready?
Go ahead.
Council workshop meeting, Monday, April 1st, 2024, 5:30 PM. Bear?
Here.
Briggs?
Here.
Coulter?
Here.
Heidrich? Here. Holtmeyer?
Here.
Patke?
Here.
Reed? Wessels?
Here.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Will all the committee members answer if they have or have not read the minutes of the meeting dated March 4th, 2024? Bear?
Yes.
Briggs?
Yes.
Coulter?
Yes.
Heidrich?
Aye.
Holtmeyer?
Aye.
Patke?
Yes.
Wessels?
Aye.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Patke, second by Bear to approve. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passed.
Presentations, Sporland Valve Plant Number 1, Superfund Site Update.
You want to go ahead, Justin, and lead them off, or?
Clint Sperry from Region 7 EPA is here to do a presentation on the Sporland Valve Superfund site that they've been working on. So, Clint?
I'm going to turn this around just so I don't feel like I'm having my back to some of the people I'm here to give an update for.
Absolutely.
So, my name is Clint Sperry. I work with the Environmental Protection Agency. I've been with the agency, 33 years this year. Long time. I just got the site, though, just last year. So Isabel Villanova used to be the
Yes.
girl before us, and she's moved on to other sites, and so I'm taking this over. And I've got actually the next door, in the town next door, Riverfront. I've had that site for about 10 years, so well aware of the area and born and raised in Missouri. So glad to have the site, and here we are. So this is the Sporland Valve site, and again, my name is Clint Sperry. I already gave the introduction. Now the state, when I put this together, I didn't know for sure if the state was going to be here, but they are here. So I'm going to allow them to have them come up and introduce themselves and what they do for the site.
Hello, everyone. I'm Nicole Nehus. I am here on behalf of Michelle Hartman from the Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services. Our group does the health assessment activities for the site, and I've been involved in the site myself for the past, I would say, 2 or 3 years. So, move it on.
Tyler Reppa. I'm the state project manager, remedial project manager for the Sporland Valve site. Fairly new to the Superfund as well as the site itself. So.
I'm glad to be here, guys. I've been to Washington, but to other sites. My name is Mihail Efticario. I'm the Remedial Project Management Unit Chief for the Missouri Department of Natural Resources, and making sure that things stay clean for our children. So, thank you.
My name is Amelia Holcomb. I'm with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. I'm a community involvement coordinator. Today was my first time in Washington. It's so beautiful in this part of the state. Thanks for having us. Next slide, please. So tonight we're going to talk about community involvement and what I do, and then Clint is going to give us a background about the site, tell us what's going on currently and what the upcoming fieldwork will look like and what that timing will look like. And then we'll also get into future actions and have time for a Q&A and discussion. So like I said, I'm the community involvement coordinator for the site. So my goals are to keep the community informed of site activities and listen to feedback. There are a couple points in the Superfund process where we formally ask for public comment, but throughout the entire process, we're listening and wanting to hear feedback about our work. I also can coordinate technical assistance, and that's a way to get experts who can explain technical documents from EPA in more understandable formats. Next slide, please. So our work at the site is under the Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation, and Liability Act, which stands for CERCLA, and that's commonly known as Superfund. This is a federal program that cleans up hazardous substances, and our goal is to protect human health and the environment. At this site, the initial investigation into the source and the type of contamination has been completed, but we are still continuing to investigate the horizontal and vertical extent of contaminants at the site. And so Clint's going to give us more information about that.
Okay, a lot of you guys probably from here, you probably know more about the site than me. I've been doing this for about a year. I have some background on it, but anyway, for those that don't know a lot about it. So the Sporland Valves site is located roughly over by 6th and MacArthur. It's roughly about the size of a football field, 3 to 4 acres. And it started in 1939 as a refrigeration valve company. So they had they did brazing and welding and degreasing, machining, and through those processes, they had above-ground storage tanks, trichloroethylene, TCE. Most people know it as that. There are breakdown products from that, dichloroethylene, vinyl chloride. And so they had 3 of them that were above-ground storage tanks. And then they also had some underground storage tanks that were used for heating and oil. And so back roughly in 2003, they did a phase 1 environmental assessment. And through that phase 1, they found out there were environmental conditions such that additional work needed to be done at the site. At the time, the plant was still operating when they were that was in roughly 2003. It's real unclear when the plant stopped manufacturing. Some of the sources say between 2003 and 2005. So they did a phase 2 environmental assessment where they did a bunch of borings through the soil to find out, are there contaminants in the soil? Have they leached to the groundwater? They also did groundwater sampling. And through that, they realized they definitely have chlorinated solvents both in the soil and in the groundwater. And it took several years later, they also did a phase 3 where they actually started removing some of the underground storage tanks and the above-ground storage tanks. So in 2011, they'd already taken down the main manufacturing building, but they took the remaining concrete and the bricks from the building. They took that down in 2011. 2012, they removed the underground storage tanks along with roughly 67 tons of the soil that was contaminated from the soil underneath the USTs. There probably was some soil underneath the above ground storage tanks that had the TCE. 2015, the state of Missouri, they were working. So the company had stopped business, but they were still trying to clean up. And so they were working with the state of Missouri to do some of this cleanup. They were required to do some cleanup. So they tested a lot of the homes, and there were about 12 homes that they put probes in the soil to see how much vapor is coming out of the soil, coming off of the TCE. So it's kind of like radon comes up from the ground up into your home. Well, that's the same thing with TCE and other volatile organic compounds. Several of the homes, of those 12 homes they tested, were above a risk level, saying additional work needed to be done in those homes to make sure that they can put a mitigation system in it. Most of the time they're like a radon system, but what it does is it'll have a ventilation underneath the slab of the house, which will take the vapors that are caught there and make sure they don't go into the home. So that was, they made that decision that additional work needed to be done. And then in 2017, they did additional work to find out what's the extent of some of that contamination. And then, okay, I think it's on the next slide. Oh, no, let me go back. I think I missed one of them. But what happened, so I think it was on the slide before. So when Sporland was working with the state, they were in a brownfield voluntary cleanup program. So they were voluntarily trying to clean up the source and the soil as much as they could to not have this environmental contamination there. They did as much as they could until they were no longer had the financial ability to do that work, and so they were working with the state. And roughly in 2015, once they found after the additional investigation In 2017, the state said, okay, we've done as much as we can do, and they handed it over to EPA. EPA took over the site roughly in 2017, 2018, and it was added to the national priorities list in 2019. So here's the site. You can see the more blue, the darker blue is the actual source area, the main area where the buildings were located. The lighter shade that goes south from there, which is 6th Street and 7th Street, that's the ground. I was just trying to show the groundwater is moving mostly south and southeast, kind of in that general direction. It hasn't, we'll talk a little bit more kind of how far we think it's gone, but right now we're showing 2 to 3 block radius, going south and southeast from the site. So this is going to be really hard to see, but the dark circle, that's anything inside that is above a maximum contaminant level for groundwater. And for TCE, it's 5 parts per billion, which is 5 micrograms per liter. At this point in time, we don't have anything outside of that red circle area, but there are definitely wells inside there that have concentrations as high as, in the hundreds, and maybe 1 or 2 that might be in as high as maybe 1,000. I can't remember off the top of my head at this point in time. Again, mostly comes from the one source area where the above ground storage tanks were located for the TCE. And that just shows you the different wells and that we have around the site and with the concentrations on them. And we do quarterly monitoring of these groundwater monitoring wells. We also did we were talking about vapor intrusion on the homes. So originally they tested for 12 of them. They've now increased this, I don't know what that is, 30 homes, whatever it is. We've tested every home around the site. There have been a small handful of homes where people did not want us to test, and that is their prerogative. They don't have to, they are not required to. We can say we encourage you to, but you don't have to. I don't expect any of them, I don't believe any of the ones that said no were next to a house that was above a removal management limit. So the ones, we have additional homes that we're going to be continuing to work on, but the ones that were above a risk management level, we have started putting in systems for their homes. So one of the reasons I'm here is not only to give you guys an update, put a face to the site, and hopefully meet some of you guys, answer some of your questions. If I can, I'll do the best I can. If I can't, I will get the answers for you. But also to let you know the work that's coming up. So we have roughly sometime end of April, there's going to be about a 30-day time period, roughly the end of April through the end of June. I know that's more than 30 days, but the way the subcontractor is going to work, they're going to work 10 days straight, be off 4 days, 10 days straight, off 4 days. So they're going to install 3 different areas. They're going to install some deeper monitoring wells. So where I was showing the plume area, we have, let me back up, I'm sorry. It's hard to see, I wish I had a pointer on this. On the far left side, we're going to put a set of wells over there, and then they're in the red. And then at the bottom of this figure, we're going to put another set of wells. And then on the far east side, we're going to put another set of wells. And so when we put these wells in, when you're closer to the source area, you're going to have shallower wells. They could be 20, 30, 40 feet, depending on the area and the geology of the area. And then as you get further out, groundwater will drop as it goes further away from the source area and the site. And so those wells are going to be deeper wells. Now this site, just along as the site, just similar to the site in New Haven, the riverfront site, you guys have very odd geology here. So a lot of your surface water and your local water will go to the south towards the creeks, but your regional groundwater cuts back under it towards the river. So we have a lot of data from New Haven that we believe is going to be the same as here. So what's going to happen is we think that the more shallow groundwater is going to head south, but as it catches that the regional groundwater, it's going to start cutting back under. So that's why we're going to be putting more wells in to make sure to see where that water is going, that groundwater. Okay, so that's what we're going to start to do in April and May and part of June. Talked about installing, these are going to be, we're going to have one more shallow and one deep. They're going to be set next to each other. We're going to do quarterly sampling of those wells, just like we're doing quarterly sampling now. And then once we install them, we're going to come back and we're going to do a site-wide and do all the wells. This summer, I believe, and Charles and some of the other people, I think you guys have been working on a sewer lining project.
Correct.
Where you've been lining some of your sewers. I think you guys are going to have another round or some more sewer lines that you're going to line. What we're going to do, some of your lines, and you guys know a lot more about this than I, but those, are they clay tile lines or brick or?
Brick.
The clay tile lines? Yeah. So what's happening is what we're seeing, what we're thinking that's happening is those vapors that are coming from the groundwater, they're working its way up through, and anything it gets stuck under, it'll try to work. And so we're finding some of the sewer gas, some of the vapors are ending up in your sewer lines. And so the city is lining some of the sewers, not through the whole town, but at least in the area of the Sporland Valve, they are going to be lining those sewers, which they've already done some. And then USGS, under contract with EPA, is going to be sampling those. They've already done a round of sampling, and then once they do another round of lining, we're going to come back and resample to see if it's working. Because we don't want another conduit for these volatile, chemicals to move other areas of the city. Okay. Oops, I'm sorry. I'm not used to this clicker. Okay, I already talked about some of this, the well installation that's coming on in April, May, quarterly groundwater sampling in July. We're going to sample the new wells again in October. And then sometime this summer, at least according to my schedule, you guys might be lining the sewers. And then once you guys are done, we'll probably come back out in the fall to sample. Okay, so that's what we're doing here on the site from in the field. From a Superfund standpoint, we have a lot of documentation that we have to keep. So we're investigating what is the contaminant, how far is it gone? Is it in the soil? Is it in the groundwater? Where is it located? Once we feel that we have a good handle on where all that is, we'll wrap that up into a document called the remedial investigation. So we may have to do another round. If we put these new wells in and we find that there's still contamination in those wells, we try to bound the site. We want to have a set of clean wells outside of the area. So if we find contamination in these new wells, we may have to step out again. We hope we don't, but that is a possibility. Once this is done, that report will be written up as a remedial investigation. As part of that remedial investigation, we will also have a risk assessment, human health risk assessment as part of that. We will also have an ecological screening assessment, which, you're looking at invertebrates and, mammals and, insects, things like that. That will be part of that. Then once we have that final, we will do a feasibility study. What a feasibility study is saying, we know what the contaminant is, we know where it's located, what are the best technologies to clean it up? That's a feasibility study. And we'll look at multiple different technologies to clean that up. I don't necessarily need to go through all those now, but there's, could be a half a dozen or more of those type of technologies. Once we get a good idea what technology we want to use, we're going to do a proposed plan, which means we're going to write this up in a proposed plan saying this is the way we want to move forward. And before it's final, we will come back here and we'll have a public availability session, a public meeting. We'll set it up just like this one. We'll set it up in the newspapers and let everybody know. They'll get to listen to our presentation. They'll have a 30-day comment period where they can look at that technology, look at what we have written up in the proposed plan, and they can ask questions, tell us disagreements. We'll answer every single one of their comments or questions. Once that's closed, we will complete a record of decision. That will memorialize everything that has been done, all the comments, and the path forward of what we're going to do with the contamination at the Sporland Valve site. This is a long process, and I understand from a public standpoint, when are we going to get it cleaned up? Because then after that, I can't draft what this technology is, so I have to get a contract to do a remedial design. Whatever that technology is to clean this up, whether it's thermal or injections or removal or dig and haul, I have to get a contract to do a remedial design, which we have to agree on. And then once I agree on that, that's final, then I have to get a contract to do a remedial action. So I have to contract again to have some contractor come in and actually do all the work we've been talking about doing for the last 10 years. So it's a long process. I understand. We're doing the best we can there. At this point in time, I do not see any health risk. You guys are all on public water. We're working on fixing any vapor issues and problems. So pretty much with that, that's most of the update, and I am here to answer, Amelia and I, or the state, any questions you guys have or the city council may have.
Yes, sir. You said it's a long process, and indeed it is.
I will probably be retired before this is done.
Well, that's part of my question. If all things go well, as you foresee them from here, when do you see an end to this long process? Ballpark.
Okay, I'm not a politician, but I'm going to have to ask you, what do you mean by the end? When everything is clean and we won't be doing anything more at this site?
Right.
Oh, goodness, it could be 30 years. Well, the reason I'm saying, because once you do the remedial action, depending on what it is, okay, you may have some contamination in deeper groundwater where you can't do a thermal, something quick and fast and very, very expensive is thermal. But it may be a very, very large area and very deep, so you couldn't do that. So you may have to do injections. You might have to do a permeable reactive barrier. You may have to do in situ bio, where you inject bugs in the groundwater. That's a slow, long process, and then you have months, years of monitoring to see if we're meeting those cleanup goals. So even though we may have started the technology to clean it up, the monitoring can take years. So,
You were mentioning something about slip lining the sewers.
yes.
So, we only have so much budgeted every year. So say this works, where we just randomly, we're gonna do it anyway. Is this something that could fall back to get all those sewer lines slip lined at their expense instead of ours?
So it's
If it works.
no longer their expense. It's actually federal dollars, so it's all fund lead now. But we'll have to just look what it is. I mean, because the area where we showed the red circle, pretty much all of those sewer lines along through there are going to be done. If we find that expands further out, I don't necessarily see that happening, especially to the west, because it mostly is going more southeast. We can definitely have some discussions whether that should be expanded. And then we also need to see, okay, maybe it has expanded, but the lining is fine. I mean, the sewers are good, because you have concentration. If you have really high concentrations in a sewer line that is not in very good condition, you can definitely have high numbers in your sewers. But if you have, the further away you go, the deeper it gets, less volatilization, the less contaminants you're going to have chance of getting in those sewers. So yes, you might have contaminated groundwater running under those, but they may be at such a low concentration or such a depth that there would be no need to line them.
You made a statement right at the end that there's no public harm happening at this time because we have public water. So none of this infiltrates our water system for what those homes are having now. That's usually the question I get.
Right. Again, I'm fairly new on it, but it's everything I've seen, you know, where this contamination is that we've seen, there is, your public water supplies are safe from that. So, and I know you guys do test also.
Right.
But,
And any homes that are contaminated, like you said, with vapors, they've already had remedial action
yep,
taken
we're
on
working
those.
with them or already have worked with them, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Yes, ma'am.
Can we, if,
Yep, oh, sorry, how are?
if we could go ahead, if you could come up to the mic so that we could go ahead, we record the meetings. Thank you.
So he mentioned all the wells. He didn't mention the well up on Blue Jay Drive that they dug. Was that also found contaminated, or?
I don't know where that is, I'd have to check. I don't have enough history on it, but I can check and follow up on you. I don't know where Blue Jay Drive is. Amelia, you can write that down, and we can get that information from you, but I can check.
Okay.
Did you have other questions?
So you said there's no health risk. I live in one of the houses that is contaminated. You guys put in the filtration system, but you say there's no possibility of health issues being caused from it, from the chemical? Because 2 years, or a few years back, I had a tumor removed. And TCE does cause tumors.
Okay.
So would that be what caused my tumor? That it could have been a health issue from that?
So there is always, I can always ask our health risk assessor, but I would never say no, it's not a possibility. There is always those possibilities. So we have cleanup levels, removal management levels, and so for TCE in your home, it's 5 parts per billion. No, it's 2. I'm sorry, it's 2 in indoor air. And if it's below that, that's the number we would make sure your concentration is less than that. I would have to look at what your, is it 0? Are you at 0 detections now? I don't know, but I can check. But I know we don't typically, we'll continue to make sure they're running. If those numbers, when we test them, are higher again or above that action level, then we would do additional actions to make sure. But, I mean, just like a cleanup water, they call it MCL, maximum contaminant limit for water. So for groundwater, for drinking water, is 5 for TCE. From a regulatory standpoint, I can't require anybody to clean up lower than 5. That's your health-based risk, your limit. Well, that's the same with indoor air. If it's 2, well, that's the standard. That's our limit. If it's above 2, we can definitely do additional work. And if it's right at 2 or whatever, we can look at that. But let's look at what your results were, and we can get back with you, and also with that well.
Okay.
But that well would be for groundwater. That wouldn't have anything to do with your drinking water, of course.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm sorry, can you state your name and address?
Joseph Jasper, 615 East A Street.
Thank you.
Other questions from the audience, you guys?
Just one more comment, Clint. Like you just stated it there, but when we say wells, I think the general public fears that we have a water well there, and it's actually a
Monitoring
well.
Groundwater monitoring well versus a public drinking water well.
Right.
In a public setting, I should be more clear on that, because that's very true. Very, very different.
Dennis Crammy, 624 East 8th Street. And I guess my comment, is that we kind of went through this several years ago, and we were told that, we would be kept up to date on things, and I haven't heard anything for a long time. And is somebody gonna communicate with us to kind of, as we go along, or?
Yes, I can answer that. Again, my name's Amelia Holcomb, Community Involvement Coordinator. As we continue on throughout the Superfund process, we'll have different stages, like Clint said, and we'll be giving out fact sheets. We'll have public meetings about the proposed plan. So that's sort of some of this communication you can expect from us as we move forward through the Superfund process.
Come on.
So I'd make a comment on that, though, also. I mean, we get data a lot, I mean, especially with quarterly monitoring, but, what do we do with that data for the public? I mean, I'm more than welcome, willing to talk with people more often. And I don't want to do just what's required by the law. I mean, I'm willing to have more meetings or doesn't have to be a city council meeting. I mean, we could do this every 6 months, or I'm willing to work with you guys, whatever works with you, the residents and the city. So I can give more updates. And I know it has been probably a couple years or maybe longer. So this wasn't required for me to do this, but to me it's important. For one, I haven't met any of you. And if I'm doing a bunch of work in a town, I want them to know what's going on. Just like we're going to be doing a bunch of work in a couple of months in New Haven. So I'm having a meeting there to let those people know what's going on. So anyway, I'll be glad we can do this more often. I can work with Charles as my point of contact, but I kind of leave that up to what you guys want to do, or if I can give information to you more often, I can do that too.
Stephanie Lane, 615 East 8th Street. My question is like he said, with the older people in the neighborhood, are we allowed to sell these homes? Do we have to disclose? Is it gonna, affect our property values? How does that all work with this being part of a Superfund site?
I mean, I'm not a realtor, but if people hear Superfund, yes, they may be afraid to do it. But from the standpoint of risk, there's no risk for you to sell your home. There is nothing that you would need to do most people do it in environmental phase 1, and your house would never, you would not come up where you would have an issue with selling it. It's not to say people may just have that fear, just like overhead lines or whatever. From that standpoint, there would be no issue with you being able to sell it. There should not be an environmental impact on your home. But people have fears, so you can never fix that.
One of the homes that I own has a radon system, and one of them does not. They're right next door to one another. One is my father's home, and I take care of him. So that's my question. He's getting older. What is this going to do when he passes away? And I've now got 2 homes I've got to deal with, trying to get sold in this Superfund site, because anybody that hears about it doesn't live there anymore.
I mean, I never want to minimize a situation where you're near a Superfund site, no matter what the situation is, because it's different for everybody. I don't know. I don't have a good answer for you, on how to sell that. I just don't. I don't know if there is a good answer. I do know this. I've been coming to Washington, Missouri for 10 years, and I fell in love with Washington 10 years ago. And I kicked myself that I didn't buy property here 10 years ago. I love this town that much. Yeah, but I mean, I don't have $1.8 million to be down there by the river, though, So anyway, I love the town. I think, you guys are doing real good here. So anyway.
You walked into that one, buddy.
What's that?
You walked into that one.
Well, it's all right. I love this town. I really do. I will talk it up any chance I get.
But you're telling her, though, that like a lot of times when you go to sell your house, you have somebody come in, they do a big inspection. A lot of times they come up with this radon thing and everything else. You're saying if they came in and did a typical inspection, her house would pass?
It would.
I mean, as far as your part of it's concerned.
Right. I mean, if they do an assessment, they would do environmental phase 1. I mean, they could look at those numbers, if she's talking about the one that has a mitigation system. If that's under the numbers, then from that assessment, then it would be, she would have that, I mean, she could sell it no matter what, but, I mean, there is no risk, you know, by that standpoint. Any other questions? Okay. I hand
Thank
it
you,
back to you.
Clint.
Thank you.
You want to, Sal, you want to take their presentation down off the thing?
I didn't do that on purpose. If somebody wants to write my name and number down, you're more than welcome to.
Okay, I mean, if you want
Yeah,
to,
yeah.
we can go ahead and take that presentation down. If anybody wants to talk to Clint, I'm sure he's going to be available out here if any of you need to go ahead and speak with him, or anybody else from our state. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Guys.
Report of department heads?
Evening, City Council. In your packet, I just wanted to, figured some people may have questions about it. In your packet is a recommendation for a park master plan. Some of you have heard me talk about it in the past, especially those of you that are on some of my boards. And so how we got to this point, as you know, we have a lot of parks and a lot of land that we maintain, and oftentimes too much property maintained and not enough staff. And so we also have a lot of facilities and buildings on the parkland and other public property that we maintain.
Hey, Wayne, can I interrupt you for 1 second? Does anyone else have this in the workshop?
It's not in the workshop. We just had it. We didn't know how long this, Jeff, this presentation from EPA was going to be, but it's within the, we can't, hey, Mike, you got to keep.
He's telling him you can't show.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Mike.
He was stopping him.
Pretty, thank you. But all support information is within the city council. It's under item 7D.
Right, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyways, and so we'd like to do a park-specific master plan. As you know, Sal did a comp plan, and it had a decent amount of stuff in it about parks, which is a big thing these days, especially after COVID. But we'd like, I don't believe, I did some research, I can't find a park master plan that was done from an outside organization. There's been some done in-house ones over the years, but nothing that I could find anyways fairly recently from an outside organization. And so some of you may recall also when the 3% additional tax on marijuana went through, that I think you all agreed to funnel some of that money towards parks and communications. And so Darren and I worked together, and we were able to fund from that 3% tax a park maintenance employee that just started last week on Monday and is doing very well. And then this first year also a park master plan. And so we were kind of just shooting from the hip on what it might cost. We know prices have really increased over the last few years regarding labor and just all these plans and things like that. And so $50,000 was put in the budget for this fiscal year for that plan. We went through the planning process. We feel like we have a good product out there. I was very surprised. We had 8 submittals so 8 firms responded to our RFQ that wanted to do this plan. And there was a selection committee formed. In your letter, it tells you who all was on that selection committee, including myself and Darren and Sal and the mayor, among others. And we reviewed 8 proposals, scored them, and then interviewed the top scorer. The selection committee felt comfortable moving on with the top scorer. Darren and I met with the top scorer, who's Planning Design Studio out of St. Louis. We met with them on March 8th and worked out some negotiating pricing things. And I had a question this afternoon on the funding. You see 50,000 from the additional 3% of the marijuana tax, and then 20,000 from the American Rescue Plan Act. At the last, when we started negotiations, I asked Darren if we wanted to do a couple things that weren't in the RFQ, such as, did we want to look at the, get a revised number and even maybe a little more definite floor plan on the old pool house renovation project that's in the budget, future year budget, but that number, the money we have in there is from 2020, I think, or 21. So a number of years ago, and I'm sure a lot of things have gone up since then. Also, not originally in the RFQ that we wanted pricing on was the Miller Post Cabin. That building up there is, we don't really have a definite plan on what, we have some ideas of what people would like to see, certain people would like to see done with it, that would include some funds pushed towards it. But we don't really have a plan of what to do with it, how much it might cost to fix it up, and things like that. And then we also would like some information on the Co-Miller Farmstead buildings up there. They're just on the edge of the park up there, kind of slowly, just there, kind of slowly deteriorating, and we don't really have a plan for that. And so those were last-minute additions into this plan, and so that's why we came up a little over the 50,000 where we thought we might be. So,
Wayne, if I may add, so all of you are familiar that in 2026, the capital improvement sales tax will, and it'd be up to the council at that time to go ahead if they want to renew that and put that on the ballot to the voters. If they do, which is what back in 2018 that we did, approximately half the projects that you had that were on that were park-specific projects. Obviously, the pool was the biggest one that we had, but you also had other things, fencing around the fairgrounds. You just authorized us to go out for bid for the main stage roof again, hoping that we can gap that financing with the chamber and go ahead and move forward on that project. So with that, that would be on the ballot, assuming that the council at the time would want to go ahead and go back to the voters. That would be on the ballot in April of 2026. So, but you have a committee that's formed that starts reviewing projects, and they start meeting probably at the late summer of 25, early fall of 26, to go ahead and start vetting out, if you will. For those of you that were not familiar, the last time we had this, we had probably well over $30-some million in projects that people wanted to go ahead and see the tax go towards. And obviously, the committee was faced with trying to go ahead, whittle that down to a more a number that we could live with within our budget, with what we knew that the revenue we would receive from the tax, knowing full well that on some of these projects, you're going to have to, this is how much capital improvement sales tax put towards it, but it may not pay for all of it. You may have to go get other forms of revenue to go ahead and offset whatever the final cost would be. The good news about this is that the timing of this, when this comes out, as if you approve it tonight, they can move forward, and you're going to go ahead and get actual, this is the way that you can go out to the general public. We will have surveys that will be out there on, community surveys, and we've gotten the best participation back from what the public wants to see, typically on online surveying. And we get very good feedback. When we did the pool, we had over 1,300 people, comment on, which was, that was off the charts. We never expected that type of volume. But obviously, there was a lot of people was passionate about that. But like I said, the good news about this, you're going to go through that public engagement process throughout this entire study, and you're going to go ahead and find out how much of those projects are going to cost, what are the priorities, and when that capital improvement sales tax committee sits down, you're already going to have a vetted plan that's already been done, and it's going to come back to you before it's adopted. So I would tell you that, I mean, in the times that I've been here for the capital improvement sales tax, when we've renewed it, yes, we've had some small surveys here or there for some projects, but we've never had a plan where you've vetted and gone to the public and asked them what they want to see in their park specifically, all leading up to right before they're about to go ahead and move forward with projects for you. So that's the beauty of the timing with this. Wayne came to me a couple of years ago for this. We punted it down the road a couple times. I said, the budget can't do it, the budget can't do it. Then when we had the marijuana tax in, I said, hey, now's the time we can go ahead. You got a funding source, let's do it. So that's the beauty of the timing of this. We can get into the specifics as to what, you know, like these projects that Wayne talked about. I mean, we have been approached by, what are we gonna do with the Cole Miller House? We do need an updated estimate on the renovations for the pool house, because you all know that's where we intend on moving the parks offices out there. They'll be on the campus with the auditorium, with the pool, everything. So those things need to be updated, and we just added those along the way, or at least with this study. So that's what this study, and like I said, I just want to tell you, this is the best way to go ahead and get citizen input. What do they want to see in their parks? What do they think is most important?
I can rattle off some things that are included in the study. I also have Andy Frankie here. He's the principal at Planning Design Studio. He's available to answer questions if you'd like. But some of the things I'm hoping to get out of this study is obviously a facility inventory and assessment of the 16 parks that we have. We'll have public input and stakeholder meetings. We'll be doing surveys, as Darren mentioned earlier. We'll have a plan for the future and future growth. We'll be able to look at the park shop, that we've severely outgrown the park shop. What a renovation out there might look like and what it might cost based on the number of parks that we have and the acreage we maintain and the amount of equipment that we have. We're going to look at, hopefully have an in-depth plan for the city auditorium and future use of that. I mentioned the Cole Miller House and Farmstead. And then full staffing analysis. Are we overstaffed, understaffed? What would that look like for the future, future growth? And then funding strategies will be identified throughout the process for maintenance, future parkland, purchases,
Grants
like that.
We'll be able
It
to,
also helps for a lot of grants, especially federal grants. You have to have a current or at least recent park master plan by a third party done. And as you recall, we just received a grant for the trail connection down there, but I had to rely on our previous comp plan because the current one wasn't finished, and it had very little about parks in there. So we even had to go back to like the bike, some of the other surveys and studies you guys have done on bikes and trails in the past. And we will have 3 concept master plans. So like our 3 highly profile parks, like Riverfront Park, Lakeview Park, and Hillerman Park, they do like a master concept plan for those individual parks. What we currently have, what ideas for the future, what we have room for, what the public wants to see based on surveys and things like that. So questions, and I'll bring Andy up too. Come on up. And so this, I did forget to mention, this, it's not as Sal can attest, it's not a fast process. This would be a full year project. So if we started, if you guys approved it tonight, we'd be finishing up about this time next year. So, questions?
So why is it that we have to have to get grants, why is it that you have to have a third party study? What's the principle behind that?
I could do a park master plan in-house, and if my favorite park was, say, Main Park, I could I could tell you guys, based on my experience and education, that we should funnel most of our money or most of the park's money to the Main Park for whatever feature I want to put out there or park board would want to see, or, there's some bias doing it in-house, I should say. And plus, I don't have all the skills and techniques to do, assess. you know, is my opinion of our staffing level what you want to hear, or you want to hear someone else's that's comparing Washington population and staff and parkland and things like that to other cities of similar size with a similar amount of parkland?
Yeah, and many grant programs you apply for, the supporting documentation has to come from a third party. The EDA grant we just got, it needed a lot of demographic information on workforce, where they're coming from. I tried to compile that, and they said, well, you're biased, you're speaking on behalf of the city trying to apply for funds, you need to have a third party come in and give us non-biased information. So a lot of times those certain programs will require that anyway.
That's basically, thank you, Sal, that's basically what I was asking. Why is that? Why, you know, why do we have to spend money to get?
To get money?
Right. I mean, I understand, sometimes you have to spend money to make money, but we're not really making money.
Well, to your point, Mark, I questioned this 6 months ago when we first started talking about this in Park Board, and just said, we have people who are dedicated Park Board members who could sit down and tell you what we need in the park system and know that. And we don't need to spend this money to do that. But things like this, where it does become in handy, where, like, I mean, Wayne just said, my favorite park is this, but a third party, nonpartisan organization gives you what we need as a whole, and it does help on the grant side too. My question was when we budgeted 50, and Wayne, I spoke this afternoon, that we kind of just threw that out there, and then when we come down to negotiating with Planning Design Studio, we come up with 70 for what we need to do. So it's additional $20,000 that we're looking to swallow here. But we're getting more information, more of those buildings, the auditorium, the bathhouse renovation, just things like that. And Wayne and I spoke this afternoon about those. You know, those are the things that got added on that may make it worthwhile.
I would like, Andy, could you have Andy speak on what kind of, as far as costs, like what are some of the costs in like a master plan? So, you know, it's going to take a year to do, but then, you know, there's architects, there's your planning, there's.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. My name's Andrew Frankie, 7578 Warner Avenue, St. Louis, Missouri. I have to do this in Richmond Heights too, and planning and zoning. And I just blew in with the weather, I guess, consultants we are. So there's a lot of things that go into the plan. We have a lot of, I don't want to say a lot, we've got 2 other consultants that are working with us. One's an architect, so they're going to be looking at the buildings that Wayne had talked about. And I believe, I mean, we've got a lot of buildings that were kind of added onto this. We also have a programming specialist, and what's really cool about this is he's not only going to help us and look at the staff and the programs that are offered, he's going to help when we look at the city auditorium, help the architects with a program, and then say, okay, if we do this, how much is it going to reasonably take to operate the thing? So we've got a lot of input and a lot of different consultants coming into this. If we start to say, okay, let's try and get this thing down to 50, somebody's got to go. Maybe both consultants, and then you're not going to get what you guys really want. And I think you're really not going to get the comprehensive plan. You've got 16 parks. There's a lot of parks for us to go through, look at. I mean, and the whole point of this, like your comp plan, is to make a comprehensive look at the whole thing. You don't want to say, oh, let's just not do those parks. They're not really big parks or whatever. You want to look at the whole thing as a whole. We found a lot of times with these plans that just having the plan in place is really helpful, grants and things like that. But some of these opportunities just kind of come out of nowhere. We had one in Brentwood. You might have heard of this big Brentwood project. Because the city of Brentwood had a kind of trail project and a park plan that came together, when MoDOT came knocking and said, hey, we're going to be working on Manchester Road, what kind of improvements? The city had a park master plan that said we need an underpass on our Manchester Road. This is in our plan, we've adopted it, we're just trying to implement it. And MoDOT said, if you guys can get your act together, do your construction documents for the tunnel, we'll put it in as part of our project. So it was just the first stepping stone. It would have been hard to like crystal ball that and say you really need to have a plan for this reason. But so these master plans, a lot of times, they get legs in a lot of different directions, so it's really a good thing to have, like a comp plan in the back of your pocket. So. Any other questions for me?
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I know Sullivan's doing a plan right now, and Pacific just recently did a plan, so there's, I mean, there's cities around us doing them, and then a lot of them in St. Louis County do them. Like I said, a lot of them are applying for grants, so they have to do them and keep current on them, so. Any other questions?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Wayne. Any other department heads?
Well, say for the sake of time, I can go over my 3 items now.
That's
So
fine.
Less
Go ahead.
questions later? Okay.
Great.
Good evening, council. So I do have 3 items on your agenda tonight. The first one, 7E, is an ordinance authorizing and directing a new contract, professional services contract with Crawford, Murphy, and Tilley for airport services, commonly known as CMT. This is a group we've worked with for a long time out at the airport. So it's kind of twofold here. On one side, we have always done 5-year consultant contracts, and most recently with CMT for engineering and environmental services out there. This current 5 years actually wouldn't be up until September of '24, so this is a little bit early. And through my learning curve with the airport, I found out any project that you have your consultant work on, by FAA regulations, has to be specifically listed in the RFQ you published when you hired them. So 5 years ago, when we published the RFQ for this consultant study, we did not have the runway extension or widening listed because we had not been awarded that funding yet. And so CMT let us know that, hey, I mean, we can't provide any consulting services on that project until it's actually listed. We went and looked at the schedule and said, rather than amend the contract, let's just go out for RFQ for a new 5-year contract at this time. So that's what we did. We did receive 2 submittals. Darren, Doug, and myself did grade them, and CMT did come out with the higher score between the 2. And so we are recommending that we entertain another 5-year contract with them. This is just to have them on retainer. If you see, there's no dollar amount tied to that. It's each project that comes up, they then present a project agreement for that project. But they're not even allowed to start designing or doing anything by FAA rules until we have them under contract with an RFQ that lists that project. So.
I know we've had good luck working with them. As long as I've been on this council, we've been working with them.
Yeah, and they talk about finding grant and funds available from outside that we, if something comes up. I mean, I know with the St. Clair Airport closed, I think
Yeah,
they were
found money
integral
for
to
us. Yeah.
getting some funding through that, so.
Yep.
So this really kind of takes care of 2 items. One, so we can go ahead and design and figure out what we want to do with the $3 million that we've had allocated to us. But 2, as Sal said, you have to go ahead and renew this every 5 years anyway, so it would fulfill both of those.
We're just a couple months early is all.
That's it.
So, you have to do them separately for environmental and engineering. They do hold both contracts. I asked if we could go out for both at the same time. They already started on environmental for a different project, and so they recommended that it would kind of screw up their schedule. So you will have to go back out for a new 5-year contract on environmental services in September, but now they'll just be a couple months off as you move forward, so.
We need to make a motion and send this to council then, or?
It's on your agenda. It's on there,
Yeah.
so
Right, okay.
thank you, though.
All right. My next item, 7F, is an ordinance approving the Chapter 100 and bonding for the Tex Wrap project out off Fall Spring Drive. I know that's been under construction and about complete, if they're not already in there. I know we haven't had a ribbon cutting or anything, but there was a little bit of delay in there. I know with Mark Grimm, with Gilmore Bell and their attorney going and back and forth on this, just with some communication slowdown, but the project terms have not changed. So last year, we did pass a memorandum of understanding and a resolution of intent to offer the 10 years, 50% abatement on the increase of that, and they have 35 new jobs with an average wage of $64,000. It had the capital improvement minimum of $5 million. They've obviously already hit that with the expansion. The bonding is up to 8.6, but per our resolution of intent, the minimum was $5 million. So. That's why you see the bonding is for an increase or a higher amount on that. And so we recommend approval of this as well. The letters went out. This was a little bit larger gap than we have typically done in between the resolution of intent and approving it, but we still stayed in contact with the taxing districts when letters went out, and they understood, when it's owned by one entity and leased by another, there's a whole nother party involved, and it just kind of slowed things down a little bit, but I heard no concerns from any of our taxing districts who received letters.
Just a reminder that this goes through the 353 Redevelopment Corporation for their recommendation, and there's taxing entities obviously are represented on that board.
No questions on that one? That one is also on your agenda, so it'll, no need to send forward. And then the last item I do have on for tonight is an ordinance amending the sections in Section 260. It's 010 and 080. That is part of our smoking ban for the city of Washington. This ordinance in front of you tonight reflects identically what we talked about at our meeting 2 weeks ago, I guess. And so this does allow for the new definition of a cigar bar that is a facility that has 25% of their sales towards the purchase of cigars or the rental of cigar equipment in the space. And has to have a designated smoking area where no minors are allowed in that area, and they also have to have a filtration system. And then the second section, that defines it, and then 260.080 actually just lists that defined use exempt from that section of code. And I know we're early, but I do believe Bill Seavey will be here tonight to answer any additional questions. I didn't tell him to prepare anything, but obviously he's kind of started this conversation and is opening that on Main Street, so.
On an airport question.
Yep.
I spoke to Kevin Hellman this weekend, not professionally, but just on the side, and asked about the new reporting at the airport. At 353, they always get the report of, how many planes are there at a daily. Really, we could have that in our packets.
Your packet?
Once a month. We get our sales tax information there. It'd be interesting information to know, the incoming, outgoing flights and fuel that we do there.
Yeah, absolutely.
As
So yeah,
opposed
we
to
have a
asking
new
for it.
tracking system.
Right.
And so actually next week, I'm sitting down with Matt, our assistant airport manager, to make sure everything's transitioned smoothly in the next few weeks, so I'll be sure to add that to the list.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, thank you.
Wow.
Any other departments?
Any other questions?
Department heads?
Department heads? Nothing? Okay.
Yes.
Executive session, public vote on whether or not to hold a closed meeting to discuss personnel, legal, or real estate matters pursuant to section 610.021 RSMO 2000. Bear?
Yes.
Briggs?
Yes.
Coulter?
Yes.